Good morning. I want to talk today about the lunar month from September 2nd through October 2nd of 2024. And this is going to be a discussion about how the lunar month will affect the world in general. So let's see if I can share my screen so that we can get started. This will take just a few seconds. And I've got to get rid of some panels so that I can see what I'm doing here. We're getting close. And we're ready to start. So this is the lunar month from September 2nd through October 2nd, 2024. And first, here's just a quick review of the last lunar month. And it was expected that the middle of the month would be very active astrologically. But overall, people responded to most astrological influences in the best possible way rather than the worst. Thank goodness for that. For instance, at the start of the Democratic National Convention on August 19th, there was a square from Uranus to the Sun and Moon, and that could have resulted in chaos within or without the convention. Instead, we saw within the convention progressive ideas, Uranus, that looked to the future. And outside the convention, there were protests, again, Uranus, that for the most part didn't devolve into vandalism. There was also a square between Jupiter and Saturn on August 19th, which could have resulted in a battle between progressives and moderates. But instead, we got a good balance of liberal and moderate viewpoints. And this all bodes well for America's future. So, the middle part of August could have been very chaotic and disruptive, uh, but instead, it seems to have manifested, at least in America, as progressivism, looking to the future, allowing peaceful protest, and a balance of liberal and moderate viewpoints instead of a huge conflict between them. So, as I always say, I just give a weather report. What people do with that report, that is their choice. So, astrology is only half of the picture. The other half is individual free will and the choices that people make. Okay, now here's my overview from September 2nd to October 2nd. The aspects for this lunar month at first glance aren't too bad. Neptune will be making sextiles to both Uranus and Pluto throughout the lunar month. And that will bring in a more transcendent energy that all will feel, though most will sense it only subconsciously. Additionally, September will see the beginning of a sextile between transing Jupiter and transing Chiron that will last the better part of 3 months. And this will bring out the sweeter healing side of Chiron and a transcendent joy. However, there will also be a semisquare between Saturn and Pluto that will make it difficult to implement the structure of various visions. Saturn is in Pisces, but Pluto will retrograde back into Capricorn on September 1st. And it will remain in the last degree of Capricorn until it moves back into Aquarius on November 19th. The move back into Capricorn can represent a resurgence of dictators and authoritarianism. But on October 11th, Pluto will turn direct, and people will yearn again for power to be transferred from individuals to them. Additionally, there is a lunar eclipse on September 17th and a solar eclipse on October 2nd. The moon of the lunar eclipse will be in Kamala Harris's 10th house, and that bodes well for her success. But it will be in Trump's 8th house of transformation, death, and the money of others. And that may not be a harbinger of good times ahead, at least for Donald Trump. So, it's going to be an interesting month. This lunar eclipse in the middle, a solar eclipse at the end. which will be the beginning of the next lunar month. And there could be some good times ahead and some interesting times. Now, here, these bars show when the various transits will be in effect and when some of them will be exact. And we can see that Neptune sextile Pluto and Neptune sextile Uranus is going to be in force throughout the entire lunar month. The lunar month in this case, since it's so close to September the 1st through October 1st, you can look at just this half for this lunar month and look at the right side for the next lunar month. We see that Jupiter sextile Chiron, that starts to pick up steam around mid-September, becomes exact on October 12th and remains strong. The Saturn semisquare Pluto, that begins around the second week of September and is exact on the 25th and goes into the next lunar month. Okay, as usual, I'm going to look at the new moon, the first quarter moon, the full moon, and the third quarter moon. And then I'll end with the next new moon. And the new moons, full moon, quarter moons, these are critical moments. These can be turning points. And then I'll look at the aspects that become exact during the week following the particular phase of the moon we're taking a look at. Okay, so beginning with the new moon, the first aspect that becomes exact is going to be Mars square Neptune. Now, Mars is in Gemini, which is more prone to communication than to physical action. So there might be a certain amount of angry rhetoric that we see in this week following the new moon. And with Neptune squaring Mars, we would expect these bursts of anger, rhetoric, or outrage to be based on misinformation, illusions, and delusions rather than actual fact. Now, this has particular importance for America because in the July 1776 charts, I prefer the July 2nd chart for the passage of the Declaration of Independence. The July 4th chart is that is when it was printed up, published in its final form, and distributed. But in all of those July 1776 charts for America, Neptune is square Mars. So this aspect is going to create a particular resonance for America. So we have to keep an eye out for what kind of angry rhetoric or lies are being perpetrated at this point. And in the worst case situation, things would devolve into violence. Now we also have Mars making a quincunx to Pluto, and this suggests that people's rhetoric and action have to make some kind of adjustments based upon the powers that be. Okay. Now, by the way, if you look at this week, you don't see any sextiles or trines, no good aspects. It's all going to be a little tense. And following Mars quincunx Pluto, we have Mars leaving Gemini, entering Cancer, and that is a shift from active talking to concerns about home and security and family. So just a little shift in emphasis for Mars. It's like Mars is going to say, okay, I'm done talking. I want to protect myself. I want to protect my family. I want my home to be safe. Okay, next we're going to have Sun making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto. That is a rather tense aspect. It's an aspect that can be a turning point or a breaking point. Sun is in Virgo, trying to serve people, trying to work out details. Pluto, on the 1st of September, I believe, it will have retrograded from Aquarius back into Capricorn. And that puts more of an emphasis on power in the hands of individuals rather than them being in the hands of a group or a collective, or, as we say, power to the people. So there's going to be some sort of tension between the individuals that hold power and those who are trying to serve others or work out the details. Okay, this could, of course, in particular, impact negotiations for a ceasefire in Gaza. Well, unfortunately, this tense aspect is going to be quickly followed by another one, where the sun will be in opposition to Saturn, and that could be a few days of restriction and frustration. And the last aspect that becomes exact this week will be Venus making a sesquiquadrate to Uranus. Okay. And this could be some unexpected things that happen uh, with regard to, for instance, relationships with Venus and Libra, or just with respect to our values and our resources. Okay, now over here you can see when each of these aspects will become exact, the day and the time and the signs that each planet will be in whenever an aspect becomes exact. And here is a nice bar graph showing the when a lot of these aspects become exact and how long they'll last. Okay, so we have about, for instance, 3 days that Mars in conjunct Pluto lasts. It's going to overlap with Mars making a square to Neptune. So uh, rhetoric or actions based upon illusion, delusion, misinformation, and these actions having to make adjustments or change because of how the individuals vested with power might look upon them. And now we get to the first quarter moon, and we do have one good aspect that will become exact this week. Venus trine Jupiter, that could create a couple of very pleasant days. A couple of days that could be very pleasant for a lot of people. But we begin with Venus making a quincunx to Saturn. Again, this is an aspect of adjustment and change. So there's some sort of restrictions in our dealings with others, our relationships with others, that will cause us to have to make some kind of adjustment. That's followed by Sun making a square to Jupiter. This is when growth may not work out quite as well as we would like. We always want to grow and be prosperous, but there's some sort of tension between us and growth at this point, and often under hard aspects involving Jupiter, people tend to go overboard. Maybe too much spending or too much optimism, too much of one thing or another. That's followed by Sun making a quincunx to Chiron. Uh, there could be some sort of wounding that happens that causes people to make adjustment. Remember, Chiron, it really wants us to transcend the visible world and get into the invisible world. It's really a planet that is concerned with transcendence, joy, and healing. But people aren't always ready to transcend. Their hard shells have to be cracked first. And that's where the wounding with Chiron comes in. I call it the LSD of planets in that regard. So, whenever you have an aspect involving Chiron, particularly one that is hard or one that causes, uh, puts pressure on us to adjust or change, a few will joyfully transcend. Most of the masses will experience typically some bit of wounding. Well, fortunately, this is followed by that Venus trine Jupiter, which I think is going to last a couple of days and can make us feel very good about things. It looks like Venus will probably be in Libra, Jupiter in Gemini. So it has to do with ideas, lofty ideas, relationships, good times. But that is followed by Venus opposite Chiron, where again, our nonverbal right brain, our sense of values, our resources may be wounded to some slight extent. And with Venus in Libra, our relationships may be wounded to some slight extent. Okay, again, you can see here when each of these aspects will become exact. And here is a bar graph showing the same. And that nice Venus trine Jupiter, that's going to be in effect September 14th and 15th. But then it's followed by the opposition of Venus to Chiron on the 16th, and that's where a little bit of wounding may be experienced. From September 11th all the way into the beginning of September 13th, Sun squares Jupiter. That's when we might be overly optimistic or go overboard in some form or fashion. Now we get to the full moon, and this is not an ordinary full moon because it is also a lunar eclipse. So its impact is going to be that much stronger. If you have sun or moon conjunct or square any planets in your natal chart, that's going to leave a mark. That's going to have an impact on you. Any planet conjunct or square or opposition to anything in your chart will also be felt more strongly at this point. Okay, now, also take a look at where the moon falls in your own chart, where 25 degrees Pisces is, because that place in your chart is going to be activated by this lunar eclipse. Okay, now we start out with Sun trine Uranus, which means the moon will be making a sextile to Uranus. And a few days later, the sun will make an exact trine to Pluto. Basically, at the time of the eclipse, we have a formation called a kite. We have this grand trine and then a smaller triangle on top of it. And this is a very good configuration. So I think this eclipse is going to, for instance, be much better for the world than the April 8th, 2024 eclipse, where we had an exact conjunction between Sun, Moon, and Chiron at 24 degrees, 19 minutes of Aries. During the eclipse itself, a lot of people were overwhelmed by the true nature of Chiron. They felt uh, transcendence. They were filled with awe and joy at being able to witness that solar eclipse in person. I was hoping that joy and transcendence would continue, but it was followed by a lot more wounding in the Middle East and elsewhere. So the world, I think, it has experienced a lot of wounding of various sorts since that solar eclipse. This one should be better because of the grand trine and even more this kite formation. The moon and Neptune are fairly closely conjunct. In Pisces, there is going to be a great emphasis on compassion, compassion for others as a result of this lunar eclipse. And that could positively impact the suffering going on in Gaza and Israel and the suffering going on in Ukraine. But overall, for the whole world, this eclipse is putting an emphasis on compassion. The trine and sextiles here between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, this is bringing in a higher, more transcendent energy into the planet involving compassion, creativity, and transformation. It's urging us towards something new, a new paradigm, because Uranus breaks up the existing pattern, Neptune dissolves the boundaries, and then Pluto, like a phoenix, it causes something new to arise from the ashes of what has been. So, this is a triangle. So some call it a mini grand trine. This is a small triangle that is planting seeds for a very different future. Okay, so that's some of the good stuff that is going on at the time of this eclipse. We also see a variety of oppositions showing that there are opposing views that need to be integrated. We're just past an exact opposition between Venus and Chiron. As we said, that's where there could be some wounding in personal relationships and personal beliefs and values. And we also have Mars. It's just past an exact square to the lunar node. So that is when things involving Mars, aggression, action, etc., can be intensified. Now let's look at the aspects we'll experience in the week following this lunar eclipse as each one in turn becomes exact. And the first one to become exact is that Sun trine Uranus, which means Moon is sextile to Uranus. And this can be a day or two of a lot of creativity with Uranus and Taurus, which has to do with financial matters and resources. I hope this means that the stock market will turn around and go up again, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. Now that's going to be followed by Venus making a quincunx to Uranus. So this is breaking up the patterns of the relationships. This could affect personal relationships. It could also affect things like negotiations for a ceasefire and release of hostages in Gaza. Whatever the current values or pattern might be, Uranus is going to break it up for a couple of days. And that is followed by Sun in opposition to Neptune. The danger is to let one's judgment be overwhelmed by too much idealism, too much fantasy, or too much information. We may get a good vision of a perfect world, but the world probably won't be that perfect vision, only part of it. So we have to get down to the details, as Virgo likes to do. We have to think it through and not just simply say, okay, this looks nice, let's grab onto it and just simply hope everything works out. Okay, next we have Venus making a quincunx to Neptune. Again, there is a vision over here. It may be realistic, it may be unrealistic, but people's right brains and their sense of value, they have to make adjustments to that vision. And next, the sun is going to complete that trine to Pluto. This is when individuals will be in sync with the powers that be. So that is going to be a good thing. And so we have parts of this grand trine kite formation uh, culminating, reaching exactness during this particular week. After that, the sun is going to enter Libra, which is going to represent a bit of a shift from focus on details, practical thinking, service to others, into relationships with others. But right after that, Venus in Libra is going to make a square to Pluto in Capricorn, and that is not going to be so good for relationships, whether it's personal relationships or relationships between in negotiations between two different parties. And then that is followed by Venus making a sesquiquadrate to Saturn, which this is like a double whammy. First, uh, Venus is at odds with the powers that be, and now it's feeling restriction in the aftermath. And after that, Venus is going to enter Scorpio, where things shift from a focus on relationships to a focus on one's desires, one's passions, what one wants to get done here. Okay. Again, you can see here when these things become exact. On September 22nd, that looks like a rather interesting date because on this day, not only do we have a couple of sign changes indicating shifts, but Venus will be square Pluto, exactly square Pluto, and exactly sesquiquadrate Saturn on the same day. Those two things happen a little over 3 hours apart. Okay. And here you can look at the bars and see when these aspects become exact and how long they're going to last. The good one, Sun trine Pluto, that uh, lasts from September 20th into the very beginning, it looks like, or sorry, at the very end of September 22nd. So about 3 days. But 21st through 23rd, that is when we have Pluto's Venus square Pluto and Venus sesquiquadrate Saturn. That's crunch time. That could be a little bit more interesting time on the planet. Okay, now we get into the third quarter moon. And let's see, we're going to have Venus making a semisextile to the sun. So the sun is focusing on relationships, but Venus, it wants to get into its own desires, its own passions, resources from others that it feels that it needs. And so some adjustment between these two may have to take place. Mars is going to be making a semi-square to Uranus. And this suggests some sort of adjustment having to occur between our creativity and the actions we're wanting to take. Uranus is still back in Taurus, which is more concerned with finances and resources and stability, which Uranus never gives since it likes change. Mars is now in Cancer, which is more concerned with the home and security. So the actions we want to take to be secure may be at odds with what's going on in the stock market or the economy at this point. And this is going to be followed by Saturn making a semi-square to Pluto. This aspect is going to be lasting for a while. And it basically represents the visions that people or others want to make concrete. It's hitting a roadblock when it comes to working with the powers that be. So there's tension here. There's frustration on both sides, and that could create a volatile situation. Following that, we have Venus making a sesquiquadrate to Jupiter. Uh, Again, sesquiquadrates are breaking points or turning points. When you have hard aspects involving Jupiter, there is a tendency to go overboard. Jupiter wants to grow, but this growth is not being well coordinated or well managed. So it could be too much too soon. So we have our passions, the things we want. We might overspend on them at this moment in time, just as one possible way things could work out. And then we get into Mars trine Saturn at the end of the week, and this is going to be a little bit more beneficial. Uh, as I said, Saturn likes structure, it likes things to be concrete. It doesn't get that in Pisces because Pisces is ruled by Neptune. Pisces and Neptune tend to erase boundaries. So Saturn is essentially wanting to make its visions concrete. It has difficulty doing that. But here, Mars in Cancer making a trine to Saturn, it's going to provide an assist. So for a few days, we have the possibility of making one of these higher visions concrete, turning those visions into action. Okay, again, here you can see when each aspect becomes exact. And September 25th, we have three things becoming exact on this date. Venus semi-sextile Sun, Mars semi-square Uranus, Saturn semi-square Pluto. So this could be, as we say, an interesting day. And looking at this bar graph, you can see what dominates the week is Saturn making that semi-square to Pluto. So there's going to be those frustrations with power all week long, and Venus making its semi-sextile to the Sun for most of the week. That suggests that these two things will probably get involved with one another, and personal adjustments have to be made regarding our values or the things we enjoy or the things we want. Uh, this one, Mars semi-square Uranus, Saturn semi-square Pluto, they all become exact on the 25th. When we get into the 28th, 29th, and October 1st, things get a little bit better because Mars will be making a trine to Saturn. That's going to make it easier to turn the visions that Saturn has been having and been wanting to make concrete, to turn those visions into actions. Okay. And the end of our lunar month, which is the beginning of the next lunar month, is going to be a solar eclipse. So that is going to be very important. And the solar eclipse happens at 10 degrees, 4 minutes of Libra. So look in your chart to see where that falls, what planets are conjunct, opposition, or square this. Uh, that is going to tell you where the emphasis is going to lie for you. What parts of your psychological makeup are going to be activated by this solar eclipse. Now over here, these are just some of the good aspects, various aspects going on at this point. I'm not doing uh, the daily blow-by-blow account for the week following the solar eclipse. I'll do that at the start of my report for the next lunar month that starts on October 2nd. But you can see some of the dynamics here in this chart. We have Mars square Neptune. Uh, let's see. Actually, this may be what follows in the week because we don't have Mars that strongly square Neptune right now. But anyway, of importance here will be Mars square Neptune, Jupiter square Saturn. And let's see. Well, this one's not going to become exact. It's fading. Uh, Venus conjunct the lunar nodal axis. Let's see. Is this actually going to be the case? Ah, I think I may have this all wrong. I may not have updated this. Sorry about that. This may be for a previous month. So let me just look at the chart here. Let's see what's going on. Of course, we have Sun and Moon pretty close to the lunar nodal axis because that's what happens in eclipse, and also close to Mercury. There's going to be a lot of Libra energy at this point, putting uh, emphasis on relationships. We have Mars making some fairly decent squares to these planets, which means that there are probably going to be some people upset and anxious about their own home, their own home environment, their own security, both for themselves and their families. So, uh, the direction that is being undertaken here with all these plants in Libra, focus on relationships. There are going to be others that are going to be saying, yes, but what about me? I'm feeling pretty insecure. Uh, my home environment feels kind of threatened right now. What are you going to do for that? Now, the good news is we got a grand trine here between Mars, Venus, and Saturn, and that is going to actually make things better as far as these worries and insecurities go. Financially, things will look a little better. People will be getting some of the things they want. They're going to have a sense that things are stabilizing a bit. So that will help ameliorate the effect of Mars squaring these other planets. We also have this mini grand trine with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that is continuing to bring this higher transcendent energy into the world that a few will sense consciously, but most will be aware of it only on the subconscious level. But these are seeds for transformation and rebirth that are being planted. Also, uh, Jupiter sextile Chiron is getting stronger, both transit to transit and also transit to natal in the USA chart. This is bringing out the sweeter side of Chiron, uh, which is going to be more healing, more joyous. And it's not at all lost on me that the Democrats are already responding to this. Joy has become a word that is frequently being used to describe their uh, campaign for the presidency. They want to bring joy back to America. That is very much in line with the astrological times. Uh, Uranus is making looks like a sesquiquadrant To Mercury, that's pretty strong, a little weaker to some of these other planets. But that is going to bring about some pressures for change. But overall, things are looking fairly good at this solar eclipse. Saturn is making a quincunx. The planets over here. So again, some changes will have to be made in response to restrictions that are going on. And of course, we have this pretty strong semisquare between Saturn and Pluto that will last a bit into the next lunar month. And that is creating some frustrations with the powers that be, whether it be powers in America or powers in Russia or elsewhere. So, still some tensions, but look at these triangles we have. Look at the sextile from Jupiter Chiron. There are some good things going on too, and we'll talk more about that next month. And let's see what I have here. Yeah, I think this went along with uh, the end of the last lunar month, which is the beginning of this one. Uh, we certainly don't have Uranus close to square Mercury right now. It's moved on to a sesquiquadrate. So, yeah, just ignore this over here. I thought I'd updated this, but apparently I didn't. Well, what can I say? Mercury is retrograde. Okay, these things happen. Well, let me end my screen sharing now. Oh, I just remembered I had a couple of more slides to show, so let's go back to the screen sharing. Yeah, and let's see, once again, I got to get rid of something so I can see what's going on. So let's see if I have a couple of more slides. Yeah, sorry about that. I've got this slide which shows various aspects, how they're distributed throughout this lunar month, and also what we get into in the next lunar month. It's not showing every single thing here, apparently, I believe. And then this shows some of the aspects for both September and also October, the next lunar month. And you can see in particular how long this Saturn semi-square Pluto is going to be in effect from September 9th through about October 12th. So that's going to be a pretty good period of frustration. Jupiter sextile Chiron, which is going to bring more joy into our lives. That starts to kick in around September 25th, and it goes throughout all of October, becomes exact on October 11th. Okay, and that should be the end, yep, of that slideshow. Okay, so once again, I'm back. That is my weather report for this lunar month from September 2nd through October 2nd. Went pretty smoothly, but a couple of hiccups, which I'll just blame on Mercury retrograde. Why not? Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you also watch my Lunar Month for Countries and People, Part 1 and Part 2, where I talk about America, the countries, people in the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, Prince King Charles, Princess Kate, the United Kingdom, um, Pope Francis, China, a lot of people and places of interest these days. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you join me again. And for now, I'll just say so long and be well.